So, let me begin first off by saying uh, this is going to take a little while to set up, so just bear with me. And additional to that, hashtag not sponsored. But one thing that I love, I've talked about my kind of wall of kind of childhood indulgence slash unhealthy addiction before, but talking about it again a little bit because um, it's kind of I love miniature things. I like I've got a lot of the cars miniature die casts. I have Lego minifigs and D&D miniatures and hero clicks and just all those kind of I have all those because I am addicted to looking at them, buying them. But the one thing that has always had a place in my heart, ever since I was a real little kid, is the Hot Wheels 1/64th scale models, the die-cast models. And I love them because no matter how old I become, doesn't matter where I go, if that's a Target or if that's a Walmart or if that's a just grocery stores, like they're sold pretty much everywhere. I always just find myself gravitating towards wherever that aisle is, towards wherever the Hot Wheel little display is, because it's usually like it's a whole quarter aisle usually, and just kind of seeing like what's new there, new colors, new paint schemes, new factory models and stuff, and just being always just fascinated, blown away by the ability of probably what are computer programs now, and but the ability to be able to model that people in there with their mechanical skills and everything to take Mercedes-Benz AMG or SLS-AMG and reduce it down to pocket-sized, or a Corvette Stingray, or a Camaro ZL1 1LE, or anything like that, and just simply, it's just always been incredible. And as you see them, I'm coming up with new colors, new paint schemes, coating styles, but something that's always had my attention more than that, like obviously I've got that one, that AMG, because I've actually been behind the wheel of one of those. My wife paid a lot of money on our honeymoon to be able to put me behind the wheel of one of those. And so I have that as kind of commemorative of us doing that together. But these things, their original designs, which if you don't know, this is Twin Mills, one of their more legendary original designs, and just taking it from beyond of what has been done with a Tesla Model S or a I don't know, classical Mustang or some of those things, from beyond that, something that's out there and existing of what can be, what could be done. And so take two Chevy big blocks and put them side by side in an engine. And I have this one because my wife and I went to Chicago for their 50th anniversary, because they were doing this touring event where they would do car shows, and they had Twin Mills at that event. They also had a couple other legendary, but this one specifically, even with the white stripe and everything, it was there. And so I have that one to kind of commemorate us doing that together. But it all, like, and it was cool, like this little thing that I carried around as a child for so long. There it is, full size interior and everything. It even had hatch, like you could sit in it if you wanted to, and you didn't have like lower legs like I happen to have. Like, it was very tight. Like small children looked uncomfortably snug inside of them, but inside of the car. But another thing that it had is a little push bar built, like kind of, that was bolted on or was welded on to the back end of the car, full size, because even though it had those two Chevy big block engines, and it had real rubber tires, and it had an actual drivetrain bolted in underneath, it did nothing. None of it actually connected to anything. And even though it had a fuel tank, that fuel tank was empty. And it had a battery, like you could turn, like, had headlights that would pop up and everything, but it did nothing. Like, it could not start, it would not run, it was impossible to drive. And so they had that bar on there because they would just it had a parking brake, and they would release that parking brake and they would just push it around. And as an adult, I was like, well, of course. I mean, it's not easy, I imagine, to bolt two like engines onto a single, like, I don't know if that's even physically possible. But you have that sinking, like, that's one of those moments where you're kind of, your childhood kind of perishes a little bit more of like, yeah, but it's not real. Even though it looked like it was real and it felt like it was real, it wasn't real. Which brings me to this guy. This one's been sitting on my desk ever since I found. They're brand new. And I found it because I happen to have a Mustang out in my front yard. And so this is what you call, it's their night shifter model, which has been around for a long time as well. And I happen to have a dark red Mustang, like this one happens to be, and it looks like that. And I was like, and it happens to be a number 3. And I was like, I couldn't say no to it because I am a NASCAR fan, as I've discussed before, and because I like cars, and then this one happens to actually look like one that I have. So I was like, well, that's all. But when I opened it, it's made of all plastic. And I'm like, well, the Hot Wheels thing is die-cast, right? It's been die-cast forever, but higher level of detail, and you can see into the interior and stuff, so I was like, whatever. It's not worth putting on the shelf, but it is still kind of cool. And I just, when I'm thinking about stuff, or when I'm like studying and doing various other things, I'll kind of fidget with it. And as I've been doing so, you kind of notice things about it. You notice things more. And like with twin mills, as I've been alluding to already, like somewhere in between the mechanical fidelity that goes into reproducing this Mercedes-Benz AMG and the artistic license that goes into developing a twin mills, you have a car like this where it's like, well, what is that thing on top? Like, that seems like it's a supercharger, probably, or what it would be, but is that like an exhaust coming up out of the top? Like, is it blowing onto the windshield? Like, why is it doing that? That seems like it's counterintuitive, or is it supposed to be going through the windshield? And then what are, like, these Back to the Future things that are on the back? Like, what is that? What is that supposed to do? I don't know. Like, has it got 2 engines, maybe? Like, what is it doing? I don't know. And of course, as you saw with the turbo video, I overthink things in an unhealthy way. But I've been thinking, like, this specifically, of like, what is that? And in my daily studies, I study a lot of things, but in it was coming across a thing about like the way to do church properly historically, and how they discover, like, how church became to the way that it is now. And like, how do we get to church, like pews, to chairs, to detachable chairs, to like all the things that we've gone into. And I think in some ways people there seems to be only 2 ways that people design, like, how their church service is going to go. There's this one. Well, this is the way it's always been. It always will be. Like, it's just old-fashioned. Like, we want to be as close as possible to the way the early church, or the way historical church, or the historical manner of this denomination has always done it. And so we're going to make it as tightly, closely fitted to looking exactly like that. But we don't know why. We don't know why we're doing that. We don't know why we're reciting this. We don't know why we pulled out go back into that hymnal to those weird written parts at the end. Like, we don't know why we're doing that. We don't explain why we're doing that. especially not to our kids or anything. But that's the way we do it. Why do we have a children's ministry? Why do we have a children's pastor where all the kids get funneled out and separate? Why do we do that? Well, that's just the way things are, right? We don't really know why. That's what's expected of us. And then on the other hand, you have these where people will try to do crazy new things. Pastor comes in on a zip line or riding a motorcycle in the sanctuary, or we're going to have somebody like ripping phone books on the stage or doing crazy dance things during the holidays, or we're going to do a book study and we're going to talk about the gospel and Harry Potter, or we're going to do a series on I don't know what. We're going to have the pastor come in on a screen, multi-site, satellite campuses, whatever. Like all these seemingly new, kind of sexy, trendy stuff that comes along. And you're like, but why are you doing that? And it's like, well, we saw somebody do this at the VMAs, and it was really, it seems to really do a lot for the crowd there, so we're going to try it. Or this is really popular among, is like a new trend among like concert production, so we're going to give that a try in our Sunday services or something. Like, but what does it do? And so it seems to me like most churches that are out there nowadays are just those two things. They're like, this is a shrunken model of what's been around a long time that you can go out there and get in the commercial universe. Or this is a really cool looking but functionally worthless process. This is something that we did some crowd research. We spent a lot of money to get some Google AdSense or Google AdWords, and got this stuff. And this is what came back that the world wants from us. Or the Barna Group did this study, and they told that their numbers have suggested that people want to be this. No one has ever, at any point, it seems very much anymore, they're like, what does the Bible say about what the church should be? What is the central, like, I mean, at some point we do need to get back to, like, the Bible describes the first century church in this way. Why are we this far away from it? How did we get to chunky plastic when for all of our history we've been molded die-cast metal? How did we get to the, like, I think and I think a lot of it's being kind of more thought about now because of the fact that, do you want to change your life? Go to a Tony Robbins conference, because you know what, he will motivate you, and he'll say a lot. He'll rhyme, and he knows how to get a crowd jazzed up, and he knows how to connect you with resources to get free of addiction and to get your spending under control. You want to get your financial life in order, go to a Dave Ramsey conference, Financial Peace University, and you know what, get the little envelopes, put your money in there, and it will turn your life around. And do you want to get free of addiction? Do you want to, celebrate recovery, or Alcoholics Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous? There's so many meetings out there that you can go to, and the accountability will be present, and you, don't even go out necessarily. You just feel like you need to get some stuff off your chest, off your shoulders. They're online, Boys Town National Hotline, or call up, get BetterHelp, or one of those things. And you know what? We're in a situation where you're in a cultural climate now where the church is not necessary anymore from a secular standpoint. You can go to all these other things, and they will help you without you in having to endure the additional baggage of aligning yourself with historical Christian doctrine. And so now the church, which has had the corner of all those markets, you want to get your financials, you want to get your sexual life, you want to get your emotional life all together, then you had to come to the church in order to clean those corners of your life up. The church doesn't have a monopoly there anymore. And in not having that monopoly, there's been a little bit of a crisis of, well, then what is the church? What is the church now if we're not putting clothes on the naked and putting food into the hungry and putting, like helping people straighten out all the messes of their lives? What are we? And it's forced people to realize that the twin mills, the twin engines of the church that has been driving on so long, that they've been stuck with, essentially, they've been so distracted by for so long, it's not obviously unimportant to help people. It is not unimportant at all. But it's not the central thing. The number one thing is not getting young girls to not commit an abortion. It's to help them realize their need for eternal life. The number one thing is not to help people to stop injecting poison into their veins. It's them to realize that they were born with poison in their heart, and that the only hope for them is Jesus Christ. And I think the reason all this other stuff exists outside of us, all this other things that have popped up, is that people have realized that you don't need Jesus to survive a divorce. You don't need Jesus to survive a stint in prison. You don't need Jesus to get through a deployment in Iraq or in Afghanistan or whatever. Like, you don't need Jesus for those things, because there's so many other ways to do it. Camaraderie and accountability and just whatever else. And that'll help you get through the mortal aspects of life, but it will not get you through the eternal aspects of life. It will not get you to eternal life. So I think what I'm getting at, which I don't know if it really succeeded, but I think the point is here that we really need, as Christians, to center in on the idea that the main thing for the church has always been Jesus and needs to still be Jesus. Yes, help people with their problems. Yes, help people with daily food and keeping warm in the winter. Yes, help them do those things. But do not let busyness with those things become a distraction from doing the one thing, and that is telling people about Jesus.